Well, folks, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to it's February, right? Yeah. Welcome to the February 2026 PowerShell community call. Everybody is welcome to join and discuss the PowerShell project. We have our agenda posted in the meeting chat and a link to the meeting discussion. Please feel free to post questions in the discussion issue or right here in the meeting chat. And be sure to check out our code of conduct. For the agenda today, like I said, we've got a pretty full agenda, so let's go ahead and dive in with our first topic. The first topic is mine. First of all, I just want to say happy 20 years of PowerShell. This is the 20th year of PowerShell being, well, pretty much in service since its release back in November of 2020 or 2026, back in November of 2006. So happy 20 years of PowerShell. And let me start off with a quick update on PowerShell 7.6. First, I know the delay has been frustrating for some of you. I hear that. The LTS releases matter quite a bit, and people do plan around them. Now, look, nothing is missed and nothing is broken. This release is taking the time that it needs because of compliance work, infrastructure updates in our release pipelines, and some very careful backporting selections. And as many of you know, for LTS, the quality bar is intentionally higher since this is our long-term support release. And we're holding to our principle. We ship on quality and not on dates. Where we are right now, the team is planning to publish the release candidate, the RC, very shortly. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe early next week is what we're looking at. We are in those final stretches right now. After that, we expect about a 30-day evaluation period before we go to GA. So about a month after the RC releases. And this will give the community and the ecosystem time to review that final build, which is very important to us. That's what the current plan is. As always, we really appreciate the folks who test the previews and file issues and help us make the LTS release solid. This release is always very important to us. But before I move on with this, I do want to acknowledge something that the community has raised about, and this is an opportunity where the community can help us. So the community has raised some concerns around lifecycle alignment with .NET releases. This is a valid concern, especially for vendors and enterprises and their planning scenarios moving forward. The team understands that, and it's part of our ongoing internal conversations to work through it and to better understand what the future life cycles are going to be. For today, though, the important update is where we are with the 7.6 LTS and on that path to RC and GA. What I'd like to ask folks is, there's a great discussion issue in the PowerShell repo started by Jay Borian. And that's a great discussion issue to go into right now and tell us our idea and give us your ideas on how we can better communicate to you. We usually do our communications through like here in the community call, but there might be better ways, especially for those enterprises around their release planning, that we might be able to do. So please feel free to jump into that issue and talk to us about some ideas, and we'll see what improvements we can make. With that, did I mention that we have an action-packed agenda? So with that, let me turn it over to Steve, who will talk about the planning blog post. Steve, good morning.
Hold on. All right, let me share my screen here. This one. All right, so for those of you who have not had a chance to read this was published 17th, what is that, 2 days ago? All right, so basically, every year I like to have a blog post about what we plan to do for the calendar year. And I will admit, not everything gets done for various reasons, all right? But let me kind of go through this and people can read this in detail themselves. First off, I do want to continue to thank, we do have a very active community, and I do really appreciate all the work that people do on their own time. So please keep that up. And this is across all of our repos, not just the PowerShell repo. One of the things I do want to call out, and so there's a bunch of work that we have to do at Microsoft that is not publicly visible. And sometimes it has to just do with security, not security in terms of like code changes, but just on how we secure our own supply chain, make sure that the way that we do releases meets new and ever-changing compliance requirements. So we always have to do that. That takes priority, and that takes priority over some of the feature work that we want to do, and not everything from a security perspective we know ahead of time. In fact, most of it we don't know ahead of time. We do want to continue to kind of prioritize getting some of the bug fixes and community PRs into the product. Hopefully, people have seen maybe a little bit more activity on that front over the last year. We'll continue to try to focus on some of that with the resources that we have. So specifically around PowerShell 7.7, so again, we're looking forward with the assumption that we're going to GA 7.6 soon. When I say soon, like this, hopefully this quarter. PS user content path relocation. So this was something that was in the 2025 blog post, and there's different reasons why we couldn't get it done. One thing I'll just also mention is like, in terms of how we do feature work, especially for an LTS, right? 7.6 with an LTS, at a certain point, and that point is usually around, let's say around June timeframe, becomes more and more risky to make big changes into the product. So if we miss that window before then naturally those kind of changes will flow into the next release for us. So just keep that in mind. But to summarize, this is where people have raised this concern a while back, where by default on Windows, your My Documents folder gets put on OneDrive, and that can have a perf impact for a lot of folks, whether they know it or not. So this is having the ability to really move your content, the content meaning like your profile, where modules get installed, where updatable help gets downloaded, things like that. The next one here is non-profile based module loading. So this has come from a lot of our internal partners, where they don't necessarily ship a PowerShell module, but they ship something that a lot of PowerShell users use, and they want to be able to expose like tab completers, feedback providers, and things like that. So the question is, how do they do that and be able to have it installed and not muck around with somebody's profile? Because now when you do an uninstall, it becomes more complicated to kind of clean it back up. So there is an RFC on this already. So again, take an opportunity to provide that feedback. Another, I keep using the word feedback, but another thing that users have raised to us is that, we have whenever we do a release, we push the update information to basically an Azure Storage blob, and then PowerShell notices that the version you're running is different from the version that's been pushed in terms of the notification. And the problem is there's always a delay between us publishing on GitHub and everywhere else. This includes stuff like packages.microsoft.com, snap packages, the store, and things like that. Even though we may publish it to those things, it takes time for them to do some of their own validation and then make it available to the public. So we're looking at doing maybe some delay here in terms of the notification. That way, by the time you see the notification, you should be able to update. Bash style aliases. This was something that actually was brought up, I want to say, when it was PowerShell Core 6, like that time frame, like a very long time ago. So we do have some revised interest into this from our side. So this is something we're going to look at to see if we can support such a thing. Basically, the idea of the bash style aliases and macros. So in the PowerShell world, an alias is really just another way to shorthand a commandlet, right? In the bash case, it's actually much more rich in terms of features. So for example, on my MacBook, I might say my alias for ls in a bash case, not in a PowerShell case, might actually have a bunch of switches, so I can get like colored output, wide format, stuff like that. In the PowerShell case, what we've always told people is, hey, if you want that, you write your own function, and that's the equivalent, but it's not beginner user friendly, let's say, or not. People come from bash will find that kind of odd. So anyway, so that's something we're looking into. Obviously, AI is still a big topic in the industry. So we do want to start some work publicly on producing a MCP server for PowerShell 7. And I think right now what we're focusing on is what I say here, like safety and security of using AI with PowerShell. All right, moving ahead out of PowerShell 7 itself, PS readline. One of the things that I personally get impacted a lot is, I love the predictive IntelliSense. However, I work in different Git repos, and it'd be great if it knew that I was in a PowerShell repo versus the OpenSH versus DSC, and it had historical predictions based on what I was doing in those directories. So this is something we're looking into. The second one probably won't affect users directly much initially. There's more of a platform change. So basically the way PSReline works today is there's a loop. And basically there's like it watches for keyboard input and there's a timeout and then it renders and then it just does that loop. And basically that prevents us from doing some interesting stuff where we may want to say, hey, the user's idle. We can maybe pop up a tooltip, things like that. So there's other things that we could do there if we can update this fundamental changing this loop in PSReline. So this is a hard change because it's just the current loop is how PSReline fundamentally works. On the PowerShell Gallery PSResourceGet side, we started this MER, ACR, and in general, something called ORAS, which I forget what the abbreviation stands for, like open something, artifact something. But anyways, that's the open way of talking to any type of container, or now called artifact registry. So this should work across like Google Cloud, AWS, and of course Azure. But the idea here is that we want to make sure that we at least first party start publishing our stuff to MAR. So the Microsoft Artifact Registry would be trusted by default. So this is if you want to install the AZ module, the Office module, stuff like that. You don't need to worry about whether or not someone had published something similar, made a typo, deliberate on a gallery and stuff like that. So we're going to work with our partners internally to make sure we can get all that stuff out there. I do see a bunch of questions popping on the chat, but I'll address those after I go to finish through this. Concurrency and performance improvements. So, module fast is great, and that's something that we've had intent of doing for a long time. I think now that we're freeing up a little bit of bandwidth on some of the other stuff that we've been doing on the gallery, I think we want to get back to that so that we can improve the performance of using PSResourceGet for downloading something like AZ module, or even the AWS module is also huge. Also, just general improvements to PowerShell Gallery in terms of reliability, scalability, and security. Yes, we do know that it's painful whenever the gallery is not available. So we continue to try to improve those things in terms of both notification, monitoring, and things like that. On the Windows OpenSSH side, the big thing is we are, and I think this is also mentioned in 2025, that is something aspirational, but it's something we're more committed to. Some prototype work has started, I'll say that, where we want to support Entra ID authentication support. There are technical complications here, but we'll continue to work through those. On the DSC side, we're getting closer to, maybe I'll just combine this with the other item that we have in the agenda anyways. So
yeah, I did
DSC,
that to you again.
Yeah, it's okay. So 3.2, we're getting closer to a GA, as similar to like PowerShell 7.6, although the timelines are not aligned. They're not intended to be aligned. So I'm hoping that we'll have a release candidate next month or so, and then maybe GA. So that means March and then April, maybe GA, something like that, and then we'll immediately move on to 3.3. The Python adapter is something that's going to be. I'm not expecting it to show up in 3.2 as a preview, although it might. But one of the things that we've talked about in the working group, in the community, and also within our team is, as much as we love PowerShell, we don't expect everyone to write the resources in PowerShell, especially on non-Windows systems. So we're looking at basically providing an equivalent experience of how you write today you can write a PowerShell class, and that becomes a DC resource working with both V2 and V3. We want to figure out how do we make that also possible with Python. And hopefully we'll get a lot more resources on Linux, for example. Mentioned 3.3 a bit. And that's kind of, and again, there are other things that we have to do and other things that we want to do that are not here. So this is not necessarily a complete exhaustive list to say, hey, here's everything that the team is only working on. But these are things that I do want to see if we can prioritize and get it available to users over this next calendar year. So, all right, I will go through the questions in the chat and I'll answer in the chat, and then we can move on to other things.
Thanks, Steve. Well, the next thing to move on to, since Steve already did kind of the DSC update as well, would be, let's talk about PSResourceGet. Anam, are you around?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. PSResourceGet recently had a 1.20 RC3 release, and this release addressed an issue where if you were using PSResourceGet to install the latest version of AZ, a 500 error was being thrown for the dependency module AZ Container Registry, and this was causing installation to fail for AZ. And our fix basically improves how we determine dependency package versions and query for it. So if you're using PSResourceGet to install AZ, we recommend that you update to the latest preview, this 120RC3. It is also production ready by virtue of it being an RC release. So we would appreciate feedback. And if you're still seeing any issues with that, please let us know. One thing to note was that this issue did not repro with PowerShell So if you're using PowerShell no kind of additional step there. Yeah, so would appreciate feedback on the RC, especially as we kind of go towards a GA for 1.2 for PSResourceGet. The other thing I kind of wanted to mention more so relates to PS Gallery. So over the past couple of months, if you've gone to the gallery site, you might have occasionally seen that when you search for a package, you get 0 packages returned message or an incomplete number of packages returned. Unfortunately, we are observing intermittent issues with our search indexing system that's causing incorrect search results to be returned. And our guidance is that if you see this issue, to use client commands like PSResourceGet to search for your package and to provide a full package name. So for example, doing find PSResource-AZ will mean that you still get your package back for search results. Unfortunately, there are some client commands that are impacted by this issue. So if you search for tags, or if you're searching for a package with a wildcard in the name, like find PSResource-name AZ star, you may occasionally see incomplete results or empty results. And we apologize for the impact and the frustration that this causes, but we do also want to just let the community know that we're actively working on this issue, and it's definitely something the team is aware of. Yeah.
While I got you on the call, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything, but just kind of check my own memory here. There were folks, there were a couple of questions in the community call discussion issue around RHEL 10 and Debian 12 and 13 RPM package support. And folks, I'm trying to get some answers on that, and we'll probably post back into that discussion. But am I correct in that RHEL 10, we actually ran into a problem with that a couple of weeks ago, and we're trying to figure that out, and then we'll work on that and get that moving?
Yeah, definitely. And we'll post an update in that issue or discussion issue when we get a chance. Yeah. And I believe for RHEL 10, I think we do have for Debian 12, we do have some PowerShell packages published to PMC. I think 7.5.4 is the latest, but we can look into other versions also being there as well. But yeah, I'll post an update there when we get more information. Yeah.
Thanks, Anam. And folks, thank you for putting that into the discussion list. We'll work on chasing some information down on that, so appreciate it. And with that, oh, wait a minute, we've already done Steve, so that takes me to Sean. How you doing, Sean?
Good. So let me share my screen here, and I'll provide a link to the what's new. Not a lot of new documentation to talk about, but lots of maintenance work over the past few months. I did a big rewrite on the PowerShell Get documentation. So I updated the install documentation for PowerShell Get. This is targeted at the new Windows install PowerShell 5.1 scenarios. When you first run PowerShell, it's using Windows has very old versions of PowerShell Get, and you have to bootstrap the NuGet components. And if you're connected on the to the internet, all of that works fine. It prompts you for the updates, and then and installs the necessary components, and then you can run install module to get the new versions of PowerShell Get and PSResourceGet. So this documentation reflects all of that. Hopefully makes the steps a little clearer. They could be confusing for a lot of folks, but the bigger source of confusion is when you're in an offline scenario where you have a brand new Windows machine that you're building, and it's not connected to the internet. It's in an isolated network. So how do you bootstrap all of that? And this previous steps we had for that were very convoluted. The short answer is install the updated versions of PowerShell Get, package management, and PSResourceGet on an internet connected machine, and then copy those installed modules over to the new machine. And then the only other thing that you have to do is install NuGet.exe. And I've got instructions for that. NuGet.exe is used by the old PowerShell Get module for publishing. If you're using PSResourceGet, it no longer needs that. So yet another reason to update your muscle memory to use PSResourceGet instead. And I think that's it.
Oh, wow, cool.
All
Thank
right.
you very much, sir.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. And next up is, wow, I've been looking forward to seeing this, and I actually got to see it yesterday, so now I'm really looking forward to it. Andy, are you around? You want to do your DSC plus Bicep demo?
I am, and I would love to. Let me go ahead and get this link shared so people can actually get to the extension in the docs as we do this, because there is now the extension up on like a public ACR for demo purposes. So you could do this demo yourself, other than you need to build DSC until we have the next pre-release out. But really excited to show you what will happen with that. So let me get the screen shared. All right, do we see VS Code?
Yep, we sure do.
Awesome. So what I'm going to demo here is where we sort of landed on the integration of like authoring, your DSC v3 config documents in Bicep. And really what this means is that you're orchestrating DSC resources using Bicep. Why? Because Bicep isn't just some DSL that was written. It's actually like it's a whole project that is all about resource orchestration. Originally written to orchestrate Azure resources. They've kind of gone a little bit back to the drawing board inside of Bicep and said, you know what, this is just plain resource orchestration. Let's make it support arbitrary resources. And they provided an API. They call it local deploy, or like the local extension model for Bicep, where you, me, an author, like some developer can come along and write an extension to teach Bicep what to do for arbitrary resources. And what is DSC v3 but a bunch of resources to be deployed. So the demo that I'm going to show here is how I've actually got a Bicep module right here. This is just plain Bicep code. This isn't using any special version of Bicep. This is Bicep 0.40.2, just that I installed from Winget. And I've written a bunch of Bicep code where I say, hey, we're using an extension called DSC with target scope local, because it is a local extension. The only special stuff we're doing here, if it's even all that special anymore, is that I've configured Bicep to know what that extension is, the DSC extension right here, and where to get it from. And this is the part that you could actually follow along now, where Bicep will just auto restore what's been published there, which if I got into the details of, it's interesting, and I'll tell you about it a little later. But it's a thing that gets restored that Bicep runs, and inside it is a binary that links into DSC lib. So it's not executing like the DSC command line. It's actually just getting information about each resource that you're creating or getting or deleting or whatever you want to be doing with it, and the properties, and just kind of executes directly. So that gets restored automatically by Bicep. And we are using the feature called local deploy. Yes, it's under experimental features. Bicep has said they are committed to this feature. We are not the only ones using it and partnering with them on that. It's just one of these newer things that they've started to do inside of Bicep, because they're like, actually, hold up, we're not just Azure. This is a great tool for resource orchestration. Let's expand it. We're one of the expansions. So I've got a Bicep parameter file that is going to load my Bicep module that we are at, that windows.bicep file, and actually has specified inputs to the parameters in that file. And this is where stuff is really starting to be super cool, because since this is just Bicep by like in use as in of itself, this isn't some sort of hack into DSC to kind of be Bicep, which was sort of our initial approach, was like, can we get Bicep to give us ARM, and then we parse the ARM, and it just like how is all of this going to work? This is bicep code. So if I delete that right there, I get my IntelliSense because it's a bicep parameter file and it's reading the bicep file over there where I said, hey, there's some options for dark mode off, on, and toggle. And packages knows that this is an array. If I set it to something else, a string, it's going to give me a type error that, hey, you actually said that parameter is a string. So I'm going to put that back here, but note these inputs. I'm toggling dark mode, and that's kind of the fun visual of this demo. But I'm also just listing out some packages because the second half of the demo is to use the winget DSC resource to get me some package info. So let's step through the bicep file because I think that this is really interesting. This is essentially a high level, or actually I think Mikey likes to put it, a higher order tool for orchestrating resources. And I'm going to orchestrate a bunch of registry resources and winget resources. And these are DSC resources that I just grabbed from DSC. It will work when we do the next pre-release of DSC. I have to add them to the path right now off the dev build. Sorry, not sorry, just, that's where we're at with things. But let's take a look at that. There's that parameter I was just talking about where I've got a string that I've defined called dark mode, and I want to toggle dark mode or set it on or off. And in this case, I'm going to use toggle, and that's my default here. And to do that on Windows, just for demo purposes, it means setting these 4 registry keys. And no, I can actually start using real full bicep code here. Like, I didn't want to rewrite the string. This is a shared prefix for all these registry keys. So I get to use bicep string interpolation right here. And it just automatically works. So it fills that in right there for this bicep array of objects that I've made, where it's name and path for accent color menu, start color menu, use light theme, and system uses light theme. And that might tell you why 0, I think, means to turn it on, because it's actually use light theme, but I called my parameter dark theme. Implementation details of the demo, don't worry about it. But here's where stuff starts to get interesting. There's no way to tell this set to toggle. It's a binary, 0 or a 1, right? But, well, this is bicep code. I can actually do a get on that resource first. And this is where things I think start to get great, because in a YAML config document in DSC, you're just listing your resources and then you're sending that to you're executing it with the DSC CLI to get all of those or set all of those. There isn't this mix of resources in there. Mix of operations against the resources. You're either getting all of them or setting all of them. But Bicep is a higher order tool. It actually totally can understand that, hey, I'm going to use this resource called current registry key. What is it? Well, it's the Microsoft.Windows registry resource. You've got full typing and IntelliSense here. If I delete this, you can see that there's all the other built-in resources, registry update list. I'm going to go put that back to registry, and yep, version 1.0.0. And the key word here, literally a keyword, is existing. This is Bicepism. If you just pull the Bicep docs on how to do a get on a resource, and that says, get me the resource that matches these parameters. And so this, underneath the covers, is going to go ahead and execute Bicep code first and foremost. And what is it doing? It's going to the keys array, and it's doing a reverse lookup for the last item in that array. Yeah, I could have used the first one and just put a 0 there, but I kind of want to show off that this is just Bicep straight up. And so Bicep is got the syntax of a _1 to go to last element, right? And that just works because it's just Bicep running at the top level. So it gets that last item there, and then it gets the pieces off of it, which, cool thing, it knows what that thing is. So if I hit dot, I can fill out that I want dot path, right? That IntelliSense is there. So what I'm doing here first is executing the registry resource to create a current registry key resource of properties here that matched system uses light theme under the prefix HKCU software Microsoft Windows current version themes personalized. And then we're going to get the value off of it. And things get really interesting here because we have full typing support. The project that I linked up there is doing type resolution for all of these DSC resources. So if I just move over to the little piece of TypeScript code here, I actually executed this against those built-in DSC resources. It went through the manifest of the registry resource, processed the type, knows what all of the things are defined to be as, if that makes sense. It gets the strong typing for that and translates it into types that Bicep understands so that something like this happens. Well, current registry key, let me go ahead and delete this and do it out. What's on there? Well, value data is on there. What's on there? Well, nothing, because it could be null. So let's go ahead and say, well, it might be null, but if it's not null, what's the item on it? Dark mode. I'm just going to paste because I don't know exactly how to type this again. Not dark mode. D word. And that was it. So dot value data dot, yes, this could be any of these items. There it is. Value data could be a D word. So as long as it's not null, let's go ahead and get the D word off of it and not mess up my demo. So paste again. Oh, that's why that wasn't completing. I'm so sorry. See, this is what happens when you do live demos and you can't type or copy paste because you're in a Windows computer from a Mac computer. Do that again. Current registry key, dot, fill it out, value data, dot, could be null. Get the item off of it. Oh my God. Andy, just revert to what I have saved. 1 second. Discard file, reload it. Dot value data, dot D word, which is off of there. More interesting to this is that it knows that that might be null, so I have to do the null coalescing to say get the D word item off that field, and if it's not available, if we didn't get a registry item, for instance, that matched key path and value name, we need to set a value for it because we can't have null values. So I do my more null coalescing to 0, and then it actually knows when I go to use this item later in this code that, well, that item might be as small as -1, and that's too small for where it's assigned down here. This D word takes the value data, and it knows that that needs to be positive. It grabbed that from the type information. So what do you do if you have some random integer and you need to ensure that it's positive to value to satisfy a typing system? You wrap it in max and say it's 0 or greater. So that gets us the number that was in the registry key. Hopefully it's a 0 or a 1. It should have been, but we got that number in the registry key, and now we can use even more cool, I think, Bicep code here, where we've got support for Bicep term. Well, no, let me correct that. When we first started this project, it was we need to support stuff like binary's ternary statement, the Bicep's ternary statement, because it meant that we were processing the output sort of before it's been executed. We got an ARM file that had the equivalent functions that Bicep said, well, if you have a ternary here, you're actually doing all these logical functions in the ARM, and then DSC needed to support those. That's not the case anymore. This is Bicep code that's executing. Bicep sees the ternary statement. It does the logic that it needs to do of, well, let me check what dark mode is. If it's toggle, let's go ahead and grab current, whatever value that we got there, add 1 to it and mod it by 2. It's executing that actual code first and foremost, so that when we get to where we're going to use the value we assign here, value data, it's actually just been resolved. It's the 0 or the 1 that we're then going to send over to DSC. So DSC isn't getting functions out of Bicep. It's just getting, hey, here's a resource, and here's the properties that need to be set or get on that resource. And that's the very next part that we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and set a whole bunch of resources. We're going to use a for loop in Bicep. This doesn't mean that DSC needs to support a copy statement inside of a JSON file. It actually, the little gRPC server that's executing against DSC lib is going, cool, let me get the first registry resource with all of this resolved and set it, and then do it again and a third time and a fourth time, because Bicep is actually doing the looping against the API, if that makes sense. We're calling just a few functions at a high level. I'll show you the bicep.proto, but let me actually visualize the demo first. So we'll set that key path to the value off of key.path, key.name, and the set value for value data. And we're doing that for key in keys, which is what we define up here again. So we're going to do 4 registry resources, and that's the first half of the demo. The second half of the demo is a very simple demo of we're going to do a get, again, on a for loop for the parameter that we had of packages, and we're going to do the winget package resource, and we're going to output the properties of those resources once we've done a get on them. Now, the last really interesting thing in here I want to point out is I don't have any sort of manually set depends on, but there is a dependency in here, right? We had to get the value of that first registry resource to know whether or not it's 0 or 1, so we could flip the bit for toggling it, and then set it. Well, this is Bicep. It's a high order resource orchestration tool. It knows, it has figured out that value data got assigned from this piece of code here, and that therefore it needs to execute this registry, this resource first. So it does that get first, gets the value back from it, and then does the computation that we need, and then does the sets. That's kind of the key thing here, is you can write Bicep however you might want to write the Bicep code per the Bicep documentation. It all just works. So let's go ahead and demo it. Like I said, I need to set the path to the debug version of DSC. That is a temporary thing until we have a new release out, and then you should just be able to do this with a built version of DSC where those resources get installed to your path. But right, you do need your DSC resources in your path. And then I'm going to run Bicep local deploy against that Windows param file, that top level one that says, hey, use that module, set dark mode to toggle, and get me some input from some packages. So let me go ahead and execute that. All right, it's processed everything. It's now executing against DSC lib. I got a nice little table output. I'll go ahead and maximize this. In the background, you can see current registry key was the first one executed, got that value, and then it did the sets on the other registry keys. My color theme changed to dark because I toggled it, and then it executed those two WinGet resources, and we can see that what was the output? Well, an array of two objects with data out of that WinGet resource of Microsoft.bicep, use latest is true, version is 0402, just like you'd get if you executed the WinGet package resource against that. So that's kind of the visual part of the demo, and the fun part to show you. This README is the Microsoft, the DSC extension for Bicep sort of top level project where you can see how all of this is implemented. I go through a lot of what I've shown you in the demo here, that we've got your type resolution happening and the gRPC server that gets bundled, but it has the workable Bicep config that you can go use right now for demo purposes. This extension is hosted up here. It does only support Windows right now. And then what you would put at the top of your Bicep file, like I did for the demo, and then the world's your oyster. You should just be able to use those DSC resources with full auto completion and typing, as you saw. So go ahead and play with that. And if you want me to get into some of the nitty gritty of like what it actually looks like underneath the covers, this is that API surface that I was talking about, where we've implemented a Bicep extension. This is the DSC extension for Bicep. These are RPC calls. This is just like a protobuf API from Bicep itself of create or update a resource spec, preview a resource spec, get, delete a resource spec, which kind of sounds familiar, right? DSC get, set, or get with, what is it? What if is the translation for preview. And so you actually then have, this is inside of the DSC project, the implementation. I think the set implementation or create or update is the one that's interesting to look at. A resource spec comes through, ignore some of the debugging here, but we get the resource type off of it, the version, and a full properties bag. We're not getting ARM JSON with a bunch of functions, right? We're getting the resource name, its version, and resolved properties. And then we're running the DSC manager to find that resource for the resource type and the version. And as long as we have then found that resource, we're just executing this as DSC library API level resource.set with the properties. And then the execution kind, in this case, actual for the implementation of preview, that's where that differs, and it's a what if. And that's it. That is a gRPC server built into DSC, or built by DSC, and built into the extension that is uploaded, that Bicep resource. That's the whole implementation. Cool. Thanks. I'll go ahead and run this again because I need my theme to be light during the day, but open for questions.
Well,
I know
hey,
questions
thanks,
in the chat,
Andy.
Andy.
Yeah, and I really appreciate it, Andy. This is really cool to see, especially where we started 18 months ago. This is really impactful. So thank you very much for coming by and showing it. Oh, I'm glad you're back, James. So James, you want to go ahead and do your demo? Appreciate it.
Sure. Let's get this show on the road. Let me drag something over to the other monitor. Could you please give me sharing rights real quick? So we got a bunch of good news, but only 5 minutes to give it in. So I'm going to do my best. You all might remember that I kind of took this old turtle thing and made it work in PowerShell. And you all might know that PowerShell has ways to do safe data language execution. Well, for the holidays, I wanted to kind of give my nieces a good educational gift, teach them a little bit about Turtle, teach them a little bit about web dev, teach them a little bit about PowerShell, but not get them hacked. So I went and made a web safe REPL for PowerShell. And then, well, don't quite have the sharing rights yet, so I'm gonna wait until I do. Now, I guess I can at least click over to the page here while we wait. Actually, I can probably even highlight a little bit here. So it's called Reptile. You can basically say, here is an initialization script. Here is a list of supported commands. And here is the REPL we're going to run. Do I have sharing rights yet? If not, I'm going to have to apologize for the resolution in the interest of time. So I went and clicked open that link. Actually, let's create a new one real quick just to show these are just running in thread job. I've got a bunch of them now. Let's go with this one. Okay, so I said to my nieces, are we ready to do full screen share? Yes, okay, cool. I said to my nieces,
go full screen. Yeah.
There we go. And I'm getting out my stopwatch here. I said, I bet you I can draw 100 pretty pictures in a minute. And I said, no, that's not possible. So I'm actually going to click start on my stopwatch here. And I'm going to click start a bunch of random times here, as quick as I can. And it's going to be generating a random image in a background thread job while I'm clicking each one of these. And they're all going to just scroll up once we're done. 99, 100. And you can actually kind of see it go. There we go. Boom. So that's 21 seconds. You actually missed it all just standing up and going away for a second, Jason. So we basically have an interactive way to run PowerShell in the browser safely. This is running PowerShell server side inside of a data block with only the supported commands that you allow. And if you try to do something like, get process, it's going to yell at you. And you're not going to be able to do that. So this provides us a way to actually have a very quick, fast, interactive experience around PowerShell and web. Which actually brings me to the other real quick, short joy. I threw it in chat earlier, but I had been looking at a site called 11D, a static site generator, and they had this sort of humble brag. Hey, we're the fastest static site generator in the business. We can go through 4,000 markdown files in X number of seconds. And that X is like 2 or 3 for them. And the article they're linking to was one test done in 2022. So, PowerShell person that I am, I just went and go ahead and, okay, I'm going to see how fast PowerShell is compared to that. I'm going to go build myself a repo with 4 KB worth of markdown files. So that's 4,096 markdown files, each about 4 KB. And I'm going to go see which is the fastest static site generator that I can find. And I will take more PRs and submissions to this, but sweet little graph there. So just running through PowerShell to build static sites purely with PowerShell, fastest one is less than 1 second. There's 11T down there at about 7.88. This is also a good module to know about that we're not going to have time to demo in 5 minutes, which is MarkX. That's a new markdown tool I built for PowerShell. That's just a little bit slower. This is the thing Cloudflare just paid a bunch of money for. Cloudflare, could I please get a bunch of money for static site generation on PowerShell? Because clearly we are way faster than what you just paid a bunch of money for. So yeah, it's a really exciting time in PowerShell, period. It's really, really exciting for PowerShell and web development because at this point, just to kind of underline it, you just saw how fast we have server-side PowerShell, which is basically about as fast as I can click it. We just saw how fast you have client-side PowerShell, which is best in the business too. So most people still are on this page where, oh, PowerShell's just this, little terminal language that I can only use for Windows stuff. Oh, no, 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 no. It is a cross-platform, beautiful beast. And while that and $5 will get you a cup of coffee, it is currently the fastest web language in the world, both for static site generation and for server-side code. So if you want to know more about this, please do the follows on social. Please reach out. There's a new organization called PoshWeb where I'm kind of trying to gather all of the people trying to build a better web on top of PowerShell or with PowerShell. Please reach out if you're interested in joining. And hey, PowerShell team, let's start actually figuring out how we can highlight this scenario and integrate it better with the product line, because at this point, why shouldn't we be really, really freaking proud of ourselves? I have no microphone to drop, so I'm just going to click stop sharing. And was that less than 5 minutes?
Yes, but I want to thank you
How many
for two
seconds
things.
over?
You were just about like 2 minutes over. So I just want to thank you. First of all, great demo, and thanks for the shout out on the PowerShell stuff. I really love it. And number two, thank you for the timing. Because of the timing, we get to have one more announcement before we end the call for today. So Amber, you wanted to come up and talk about, I forgot what you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, just the gallery migration to AKS. So I just wanted to provide a quick update for this. So I know there's some concerns about this work. It's still a top priority for us. We've been working on this for about a year and are done with the initial stages of it. We're going to be slowly testing in our Canary environment and then moving over to prod. We're still quite a few months out for that to happen, but I just wanted to say that this is still definitely a very high priority for us, and moving over to AKS will, we're hoping, help alleviate some of the scaling issues that we've been experiencing for the past year and a half or 2 years. But this is a really, really big project. We've had to rewrite the entire, well, not the entire, but a lot of the gallery code base. We've had to build out entirely new infrastructure. So this is quite a bit of work. We're moving very cautiously because we want to make sure that, like, as this migration happens, especially in prod, it doesn't impact users and that the experience is actually better than what it currently is. So just a quick update on that. If there's any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat and I will answer those.
Great. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Amber, and thank you, everyone. This will bring our February community call to a close. Please feel free to keep typing in questions into the chat and stuff like that, and into that discussion in the PowerShell repo that we were talking about at the beginning of the call. I'll try to get the call up as soon as I can within the next few days. So with that, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful month, and we'll see you back in March. Cheers.